Hello guys, welcome to another interesting topic in our TestNG series, that is parameterization. I'm saying this is interesting because in real-time projects or real-world projects we will be using this feature a lot, right? When do we usually use parameterization is during the data-driven testing. All right, so what is data driven, how to parameterize it, we'll be seeing that in this video or session, right? Parameterization can be done using two ways in TestNG. That is, one using @parameter annotation, which takes two arguments or two attributes as param1 and parameter 2. It can be more than these two, but I have just given an example with two arguments. Alright, and the other way of parameterizing is using data provider annotation, right? But in this session we will look at parameter annotation, and in the following session we will look at data provider. Alright, let's jump in. This is our previous class which we have been using from the past 2 or 3 sessions. Alright, and here in this class we have multiple test methods in order to place a trade and capture confirmation number. Place an order and capture the confirmation number. Okay, in real-time projects, what we will be usually doing is like this particular login test. With every application, majority of the times will have a login feature, and in order to test that login feature we will be coming up with multiple positive and negative scenarios. Okay, and positive scenarios will allow the user to log in, whereas negative scenarios won't be allowing the user to log in, right? Say suppose we have two scenarios, one to test positive login and the other to test negative scenario. Okay, so let us consider this particular step as a positive scenario. Even before going to that, I would like to show you how a real Selenium code looks for this particular test. Alright, so this is how a test related to login looks using Selenium code. Okay, where we will be passing username and password like this in the code. But this way of mentioning the username and password is called hard coded. Hard coded means the usernames and passwords written within the class file, right? If you see this, we are creating a WebDriver, and using that WebDriver we are finding an element is nothing but every edit field, be it username field, password edit field, button, right, drop down list, link, all these are elements. And we are looking for a particular element which has an ID as username, and to that we are passing John as the text, in which is nothing but a username. Similarly, we are finding an element with the name as password and passing password as 4 ones. Likewise, we are finding sign in button and clicking that one. Alright, after clicking that we are waiting for a couple of seconds for the user to be taken to a new page where user sees some welcome message, in this case welcome John. So this is how we'll be writing our Selenium code. But to simplify, and since we are not there yet to learn Selenium, and this is purely based tutorial, purely based on TestNG training, we have not given any of this code in our examples. Okay, so imagine whatever we are seeing here as a login test to be equivalent to something like this, and wherever we are mentioning username or John or password or 4 ones, we are talking something of this kind of code. Okay, all right, let's go back here. Say suppose as part of this test, user is performing login, and this time user name used as John, so performing user login with username as John and password as 4 ones. All right, now let us give a name group. Let us group this particular test case, and we will call that group as login. Okay, now let's go to testng.xml and make that change over there as well, in order to run only test cases that are tagged as group login. Okay, so let's go here, groups, right, and we will run, and we will include name will be login. All right, now let us run this test. So now if we have observed that this is the only test that got executed, because that is the only test grouped with the name login, and we are seeing John and password 1111 getting printed over here. All right, say suppose we want to run the same test for a negative scenario. Okay, when we run this test for a negative scenario, that shouldn't allow the user to log in, right? So what should we do now, right? Do we go and update this John to some Tom123, which is invalid, and some password saying something which is not allowed or incorrect? So will we be changing this and running that test case again, right? No. So in our real-time projects we won't be doing that. Then what is the other option do we have, right? So the other option we have is copying the same test and running it invalid login test, and this time we are saying Tom123 and some number, invalid password, right? So now when we run this, we will be executing both the test cases we are interested in. One is positive, the other one is negative, right? Likewise, say suppose we have more number of positive scenarios and more number of negative scenarios. What is the solution, right? So are we going to copy this particular code those many times, right? No. So this is actually increasing the complexity of the code. The maintainability of the code is in danger. So whenever we try to something knowingly or unknowingly, we might commit some mistake, and that may stop us from executing or running the test. All right, so during such scenarios or such cases, parameterization comes handy. All right, so we won't be changing the usernames and passwords here at class level. Instead, we will be passing the data that needs to be used in these test methods either through testng.xml or through some external file. Could be a Cucumber feature file, could be an Excel file. All right, so let us see how to do that first in through testng.xml. Then later on in the following session, we will see how to pass it from a data provider as well. All right, okay, so now let us get back to our previous or old message, which is performing user login. Alright, so in order to pass the username and password from TestNG, we need to modify our login test a bit. Okay, so let us try modifying that one. The first change what we would need will be adding a parameter annotation, which is parameters. Okay, with this we are indicating we are going to pass parameters to the following method. All right, and what are those parameters going to be, right? So we have to define that as well as attributes or arguments to this parameters annotation. All right, so let us do that. So we will be opening a parenthesis and curly braces, and within that curly braces we will be specifying what are the variables or data we want to pass. So in order to perform our login, we would need a username and password. For that reason, I am planning to pass username and password from testng.xml, and that is what I want to define here in this parameters annotation. So username will be the first parameter and password is going to be the next parameter. Alright, we have now added username and password are the expected parameters. Now writing this alone won't help us passing those usernames and passwords to this system.out.println message. So for that we have to add or modify our login test method a bit. So that is by adding the arguments, right? By adding the arguments to this login test method. So what are those arguments that we'll be passing is string username comma string password, right? So these are the two arguments that we will be passing to our login test method, right? By specifying this variable or argument as a string, means that we are going to pass string value for username and we are going to pass a string value for a password. So when we say string, it is a text or word or a line of text or a sentence. So that is considered as string in Java. Okay, so if we want to pass a number, then we will be specifying int, which stands for integer. So if we say we'll be passing integer for password, then we have to pass only an integer or a number as a value of this parameter password, right? But we want to pass it as string only, but not as integer. Okay, so what is exactly happening is we are specifying two parameters, and these parameters are being pulled from an external source. In this case we are going to pass them from testng.xml, and whatever being passed to these parameter values, right, we'll be passing them as is to the test method. Okay, so whatever we are going to receive from testng, we are pulling them here in this parameters annotation, and we are passing those two usernames and passwords to our method as arguments. Now in order to see what has been passed to this username and password variable, let us print that out. Okay, performing username user login using username as, right? Okay, and I will try to concatenate the text, the following text, with a plus sign, right? So I will be saying uname and we want to again attach or concatenate the previous string to a new string, which is and password as, and to that previous string we want to add a new value which is password. Okay, so this is the way we attach different strings together, or we concatenate different strings together. Okay, whatever written in double quotes will get printed as is, and whatever is being passed here is will be fetched from this argument, and this argument is fetching the username value from this parameters annotation, and this parameters annotation is will be fetching the username from testng, which we will be seeing shortly, right? Likewise, password also being passed from testng. Now we are done with whatever changes we need to do at a test class level. Now let us make the necessary change to our testng.xml. Alright, so we are at testng.xml file, and here where do we want to pass those parameters from, right? We can give them at suit level, and also we can give them at test tag level, right? When we specify at a test tag level, these parameters whatever we are being passed, we will be passing will be linked to this particular test class, which has defined here as class name. Okay, now let's quickly write down or add the parameterization tag here. Okay, so the first parameter which we are passing will be user name, right? So I will be saying username, and this username should carry a value which we want to pass to the test, right? So for that we will write value, and that value is John. Alright, we will end this tag over there, and we will copy down a new line for password, and this time we will give the parameter name as password and the password as 4 ones. Alright, now the expectation is whatever we have specified here as parameters to this class should be fetched into this parameters annotation, and those values should be passed as arguments to this login test method, which in turn will be used by the code within that block of login test code. Okay, now let us run our testng.xml and see what is getting printed. Alright, so it is complaining something it didn't run as expected. Let us see what's the error. Alright, it seems we are asking that to run a login test, and this login group name is missing from our test method. So let us quickly add that as well. Groups is equal to login. Alright, now let us rerun the test. Alright, now we see the message getting printed to the console, and that message is as expected. That is, the usernames and passwords are printed here as John and 1111, which are passed from testng.xml. Okay, so likewise we will be parameterizing any number of variables from the testng.xml. So say suppose we may be having another variable or another value that we want to parameterize, then we will add another parameter value here and another argument over here and another parameter tag over here, and that will get printed as well in the console. Okay, now what is that we have to do in order to run this same test now for an invalid login test? So currently this has been run for a positive test, right? What if we want to run it for a negative test, right? For that, what we will be doing is we will be repeating that test again, right? So we will repeat this test, right, again, and this time we will change the name to invalid user Tom and invalid password 1234. Okay, now let us run this test again. Alright, this is failing because we have a duplicate test name. So let us write it down. Let us change the name of this test to invalid login test. Okay, and we will change this to valid login test. Saving it and let us run. Alright, now this is getting printed or getting executed with both valid username and password and invalid username and password. So what about if we want to run for other positive scenarios and other negative scenarios as well? So simply we will be copying it down multiple times to run that test those many times by updated parameters, usernames and passwords. But is that ideal to do that? If it were like this, like one or two scenarios, it would be okay. But what if we want to run our test against some 26 usernames and passwords, right? We have to copy it down like 26 times, right, which will actually increase the length of the file and also will be much complicated by going to each parameter and updating them with usernames and passwords. So for such a situation we have an alternative annotation that we can use to pass the data to the test method. So using that method we won't be passing it from testng.xml, but it can be passed from within the test class or from another test class. We will see that example in the next session. Thank you.